Hey, I'm Zoe Binning from Zoe Binning Wedding Business Consultancy, and I am a wedding expert, and for a number of years I've been a wedding planner. I also am the creator of the podcast, The Icing on the Cake, which is all about how to plan your wedding. And it's not just how to plan your wedding anywhere, it's how to plan your wedding in the UK. Because ultimately things work differently here than they do in the States and Australia and Canada and everywhere else. Traditions are different, the legalities are different. And so as a result, I thought it was really important to help couples wanting to get married and wanting to plan their own wedding, how to go about doing it and make sure that everyone's considering what you need to consider, following the stages you need to follow, and doing things in the right order to make the whole thing as stress-free and as fun and as easy as possible when you're also trying to live your life as well. So basically what I'm doing with this selection of videos is talking you through all the different elements that you need to consider in the right order when you're planning your wedding. The podcast that I have, The Icing on the Cake, has been running for 2 series now, and there are more series to come. And it kind of occurred to me whilst I was podcasting, I hadn't really shared videos, and a lot of people don't necessarily listen to podcasts, but would really, appreciate the help and appreciate the ideas and the tips. So I thought I would give some mini versions of the podcast episodes on here for you. If you want to go and find the podcast, it is called The Icing on the Cake, and it's how to plan your wedding in the UK. So you can obviously get the full episode there if you look on my blog, which is weddingsbyzoe.co.uk. /blog The Icing on the Cake, and you can look at the show notes on there as well, and that'll give you more detail, links, all kinds of things. But basically this episode is the 5 things that you need to consider before you do anything else to plan your wedding. And these really are key, fundamental, and you have to think about these first, because if you don't, honestly, you won't know where you're coming from, where you're starting. This is key, important, top tip stuff. Okay, so I am going to start with number 1, cunningly. Number 1 is, what sort of day do you want? Now, this is really, really important. Sit down with your other half, with your fiance, with the person you're marrying, and have a little chat about what you want your wedding day to be like. Because, to be quite honest, if you've got these ideas of having a massive white wedding and your other half's thinking a little beach kind of wedding, just the 2 of you, you're going to jet off abroad, you kind of need to think about this. If you're thinking you want, 200 people there, and your other half's thinking, just maybe 20, again, something you need to chat about. You might have really kind of clear ideas of the sort of venue you want to get married in. Your other half might not, or they might have clear ideas and those ideas aren't your ideas. So before you go any further, sit down and have a really kind of good chat about exactly what you're both thinking this day is going to be about. Who's going to be there, what kind of number of guests we're talking about, what kind of sort of venue are you talking about, have you got any ideas of a theme or a style or whatever. But just have that chat before you go any further, because until you've had that chat, honestly, you don't know what you're planning between you. Okay, number 2, hugely key. How much money is it going to cost you? Now, again, talking about money is a really difficult thing, and I get that. I do. I understand. And quite often I've sat down with clients and I've said to them, there might be the couple and maybe parents or whatever. I said, what's your budget? And they look at each other in a, we haven't talked about that. That's not something we felt comfortable discussing. You've got to discuss it. You've got to. Now, the thing is that everybody has a budget. Now, people say to me, I'll just spend what I spend. I've got no, I haven't got a budget. I'll spend whatever it costs. But often they say that to me when they just don't know how much it's going to cost. And so what I'll then do is I'll say to them, well, okay, well, let's throw some figures around and you tell me what an unlimited budget means to you. Is it £5,000? Is it £10,000? Is it £20,000? Is it £50,000? Is it £100,000? And at some point during me giving them those numbers, they'll start looking a little bit scared and a little bit green. And suddenly you realise, of course, they have a budget because everybody does. But nobody, if you haven't done this before and you haven't, been involved in planning anyone's wedding before, you probably don't know what an average wedding costs. Now, I will tell you, an average wedding in the UK costs somewhere between £20,000 and £24,000. Now, that doesn't mean that if you don't have £20,000 to £24,000 to spend, you can't get married. Of course you can. Of course you can. But it does mean that you need to think about what that means in terms of the look of your wedding. So again, people will sit down with me and say, oh, I want this in terms of flowers, I want this kind of venue, I want this number of guests. My budget is £15,000, which is fine and is a lovely budget. But the wedding they've just described to me is a £50,000 budget wedding. So somewhere in the middle of that, you've got to figure out what you're prepared to compromise on, what you really want, and actually what's important. Now, to work out what you want to spend and what you can spend, you need to kind of create a ballpark figure. Because ultimately, it's your wedding day. I get that. It's really important. It's a really special day. But, and this is something I always say to people, it's one day. It is just one day. You want it to be a fab day. You want to look amazing. You want all your friends and family there. You want it to be really special. You want to give everyone good food, good entertainment, drinks, the rest of it. But you actually want to do this without bankrupting yourselves for the remainder of your natural lives, ultimately. So you've got to think this through. Very, very basically, about 50% of your wedding budget is going to be taken up with the food and the drink and the venue. So it's actually based upon the number of guests you're inviting. So when you multiply out the cost of the food and the drinks per person, plus whatever the cost of the venue is, that's probably about half what you're going to spend overall, on absolutely everything. So therefore, if you've worked that out based on your numbers of guests and that figure seems, oh my gosh, that's horrendous, then you're going to have to rethink the number of guests you're inviting. You're also going to have to rethink maybe the venue and the cost of the food and whatever. So that's just to give you a bit of an idea. I will be talking about budgeting in way more detail in another video, so don't worry about it at this stage, but just have a little think and just get an idea about what you want to spend. Okay, number 3, how is your day going to look? People get really, really hung up and really stressed about picking a theme. People say to me all the time, we haven't got a theme. I don't know what the theme is. You don't have to have a theme. You don't have to have a theme. It doesn't have to be too formal. It doesn't have to be too precise. But it's all about making sure that everything you have for your wedding works together. So it's about selecting the right decor, the right colours, and a suitable backdrop for your venue to ensure that it all works together. It doesn't look too busy, too crazy, or just a complete mess. Also, when you think about what you want, your theme could be as simple as, I like the colour blue, I like the colour pink, I want red. That could be it. It could be, I really like sunflowers, I really like red roses, I really like hydrangeas. That could be your theme. It doesn't have to be Star Wars or Harry Potter or a beach wedding or whatever. It doesn't have to be anything really specific. It doesn't have to be anything crazy or outlandish. It can be as simple as a flower, a colour. But just make sure that whatever you go with, everything that you buy, that you hire, matches that. And if it doesn't, get rid of it. Again, we're going to do a whole chat, a whole video about styling your venue, styling your wedding. So again, not too much down the line now. But all I would say is, if pink is your favourite colour, then you might have to tell your other half there might have to be some pink in their outfit. If that isn't going to work, then maybe there's a conversation to be had about, can you have a second colour or something that they can wear as well. So just have a little think about that. It might be that your other half doesn't bother, isn't concerned at all, and is quite happy for you to choose. Great, but have that conversation at this stage. So we have talked, just to recap, number one, what kind of day do you want? What sort of, vision have you got for your wedding? Number two, what's it going to cost you? Number three, how is your day going to look? So this leads us on nicely to number four, where are you going to get married? So you've got to find somewhere that fits you both, suits your character, suits the kind of style of wedding that you want. But it also has to be able to accommodate the number of guests you want to invite. It has to look the part. So, for example, if you want a real beach-themed wedding, you probably don't pick a barn, or a stately home. You pick somewhere that's by the sea, or, it's got to be suitable. If you want a very clean, white, clear, crisp wedding, maybe you don't pick a stately home again, or a castle, because they've got kind of maybe heavy drapes, or they've got big sort of heavy dark colours in the curtains or the carpets, or whatever. So your venue has to reflect the kind of day that you want. It also has to be somewhere you can afford. And the venue is really, really key, and underpins kind of everything. But we will be talking about venue in the next video. So the video after this is all about picking your perfect venue. But just again, have a little chat at this stage. Where do you see yourselves getting married? And just have that conversation. And then the fifth thing to think about is sorting out your suppliers. Now, the best suppliers get booked up quickly. So it is very important, once you've worked out when and where you're going to get married, it's very important to start thinking about the key suppliers. We are going to discuss all the suppliers in detail over the coming videos. But just in a nutshell, thinking about who you want. So venue first. If you're getting married in a church or a registry office or a separate venue to your reception venue, make sure you've booked the date with them both. Make sure you've arranged the time with your registrar if you need one of those. So make sure you've got that first. Make sure you've obviously figured out where you're getting married and when you're getting married. And then once you've got those things firmed up, you can start booking suppliers. Now, the first supplier to book, I always think, is the photographer. Photographers should come first. Photographers do get booked up quickly, and of all of your suppliers, other than your wedding planner, you've got to love your photographer, because you spend a lot of time with your photographer. So make sure you you book someone that you feel comfortable with, that you like their style of photography, and if you've got someone that in mind, you want to book them up first. Quite quickly. Again, we'll talk about photographers in more detail in future videos, but photographers are one of the first people. The next supplier to think about is your florist. Flowers are central, really, in so many occasions for making your day look amazing. So it's the next supplier that you need to think about. Flowers might not be really important to you, but it is a good and clear way of identifying a theme. So if you do want, flowers, and they are key, that's going to be one of your first suppliers to book. Cake makers. Oh my gosh, cake, my favourite topic. You'll see this and hear this in every video, probably, and every blog post and every podcast that I ever talk about. But yeah, cake is key for me. Cake maker, another supplier that gets booked up quickly, and ultimately they can only make so many cakes and deliver so many cakes on a given day. So if you want a particular cake maker and you've got a style and vision in mind, get that cake booked next. And then, of course, after that, what you're wearing. whether it's your dress, a suit, whatever it may be, whatever your style is, whatever you and your partner are thinking of wearing for your day, you want to look amazing on your wedding day. So you want to look $1 million, and ultimately what you wear will help you to feel like that. And that's really, really key. So find something to wear that you just fall in love with and is exactly what you want. You don't have to buy it, or you don't have to try it. It doesn't have to fit you perfectly, 2 years before the date, but decide what you want and get an idea as soon as you've started booking some of those key things. Again, dresses, suits, whatever, we will discuss all of those. But I just want to reiterate, when you are starting to think about planning your wedding, you get engaged, you've got over that excitement of the ring, you two need to sit down as a couple and decide, what are the key things we need to think about for this wedding? What are we both looking for? What are we both thinking of? And what kind of event are we talking about here? So just to recap again, what sort of day you want is the first thing to think about. Number 2, how much money it's going to cost you. What are you spending on this day? What can you spend? Number 3, how is the day going to look? What kind of style, theme, entertainment are you thinking about for your day? Number 4, where are you going to get married? What is what kind of venue are you thinking about? And then number 5, thinking about your suppliers and sorting those out. Right. That is all I want to talk to you about today. If you want to sort of understand more about those in more detail, have a listen to my podcast. And if you have any more questions, then please feel free to email me at zoe@zoebinning.co.uk. That's zoe@zoebinning.co.uk, and I would be delighted to answer any questions you have in future videos, or I can obviously respond. Hope that's helpful, and look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care. Bye bye.